Right. One thing we agree on, crime rates are steadily falling. So, and I also agree a lot on the explanations that you've suggested. I'm afraid there won't be any game theory or cheap talk for the time being, but I can come back to it if you're really, really interested.
It's cheap talk, I was really asking.
Yeah, I mean, well, this is cheap talk, but the point is that if you look at it, there isn't that much of difference between maybe the way a criminologist approaches crime and the way an economist does. Both are kind of looking at incentives in a way. What we bring to the table, apart from building models, and I've deliberately not put up any equations or charts or figures because we're supposed to just puzzle people with them, so I'll just try to keep to the basic intuition of what's going on. What we bring to the table, apart from building models and trying to understand what factors can affect crime and in what way, the other thing that we bring to the table is understanding quantitatively, when you know that 12 different factors can be causing crime, what's the partial impact of each factor, right? So all the factors that you mentioned, they're all extremely important, but is there a rigorous quantitative way of separating out these factors? And in particular, is there a way of separating out what is correlation from what is actually causal? Now, this is really important because if you look at correlations, you might often see something rather bizarre. If you plot, for instance, police expenditure or police force against crime, you see a positive relationship. So you think, oh my God, having more police actually causes crime. Whereas the relationship is most likely to be reverse causality. There is more policing in response to crime. So understanding what the actual determinants of crime require this careful separation of causation from correlation. And once you do that, and we do have modern econometric techniques to deal with such things, we find that actually a lot of factors do cause crime, and it's not really an either or. Policing is important. There's consistent evidence showing that detection rates systematically matter in lowering crime rates. So it doesn't matter how you do the statistical analysis, detection comes out quite strong and negative once you control for causality. Prison, again, a little bit as you suggest. So obviously the large increases in prison population have played a role, which doesn't necessarily mean that you want to use prison as an appropriate method to deter criminals. One, because it's extremely costly, and second, it could become a learning house for future criminals, and that could be one reason why you have so much of repeat crime in the UK. But it's clear that at least for some types of crime, long prison sentences can keep people who are crime-prone off the streets. Now the economy, the so-called puzzle about the recession and unemployment. Well, yes, it's kind of a puzzle at first glance, because you think if people are unemployed, then they might steal because their outside option is low. That's true, that's the so-called motivation effect that people talk about. But it's much more complex, because unemployment, of course, increases crime because of the motivation effect, but there are fewer options for crime. First of all, people guard their property better. So burglary may go down because people stay at home and they're more careful. And also a recession, if it's accompanied by a general fall in wages, means that there is less to steal. So the combined effect of these two could actually imply that the recession crime effect is ambiguous, so it could in principle go up, but it could just as in principle go down, and we might be seeing something of that. This is not inconsistent with the explanation that different types of recession have different impacts on inequality and the incentives for people to be crime-prone or engage in criminal activity. But certainly, it's not maybe as much of a paradox as you would think it is. Now, that's all very good, but there are also specific issues, for instance, which need to be sorted out. If you just look at the impact of wages, it could go either way. But it seems that there's a consistent effect of lowering crime when you increase wages or for the lowest 20% or 25% of people. So whether it's through an increase in minimum wages or whether it's an increase through the wages that the low income earners earn, that certainly has an impact in reducing crime. However, and that's why I think there's still a lot to understand about why crime is falling, even after you control for policing, prisons, detection, unemployment, all wages, you still have a large downward trend, which means that there's an unexplained residual going, right? So we need to search for more explanations, because this explains, I mean, the socioeconomic factors and policing explains a bit of crime, quite a bit perhaps, but there is still a consistent downward trend after you iron out these factors. And of course, there are various explanations, and I could get into some of the explanations about behavioral explanations, which Mark seemed to suggest would be interesting. But let me just briefly mention two explanations proposed by other people. One, the extremely controversial abortion crime link by Steve Levitt and Donahue. They suggest that the sharp drop in US crime coincided with the legalization of abortion, in the sense that when abortion was made legal, about 18, 20 years later, these people who might have been born had abortion not been legal, would have been young, would have been in families which probably couldn't care for them well, and might have been crime prone. He suggests that there is in fact a causal impact even after you control for other factors. It has been criticized not just because it's controversial, but because some of the original calculations were found to be incorrect, but in the rebuttal they show that there's still a consistent effect. However, if you look at other countries, this link has not been causally established. So it could be that it explains some part of the US crime drop, but possibly not for other countries. The other explanation, which I find very interesting, is the so-called lead hypothesis, which suggests that lowered exposure to lead because of more aggressive environmental standards causes people to be less aggressive and therefore less crime prone. Again, causality hasn't been established, but the correlations are extremely suggestive that lead may have had an impact by changing the behavior of people. The other thing to point out, and because young people unfortunately get a very bad name for committing crime, youth crime has gone down. Now that could be because now they have Xbox, so they don't need to vandalize. It could be, so if you can do stuff on Xbox, or you can rant on Twitter, maybe you don't need to go and vandalize. But certainly youth crime also seems to be down. But then I should add a word of caution. Even though youth crime has gone down, young people are extremely sophisticated in terms of their internet usage and uses of computers. So it could be that while it's not being completely picked up in the figures, sophisticated fraud and forgery may be the crime of the future. I hope that's not too pessimistic a note to end on, but that's it.